I'm Dr. Anthony from ChiroEdge, and welcome to another episode of the Chiropractic Research Breakdown, where, as you know, we break down the relevant chiropractic science and philosophy to empower you to change the health of your community from the inside out. And I'm super grateful to be here today with Dr. Bruce Steinberg, CACCP through the ICPA, New York State board member at the pinnacle of everything going on in the world right now, and in self-proclaimed, I just love learning, mishmash of accolades and research, and I love that because I really feel the same way. So we're going to go ahead and jump into, with Dr. Bruce here, some research that was recently published in the Annals of Vertebral Subluxation Research. He published with Dr. Russell, who's been on here before in the past, and it's called Reduction in Anxiety and Dysautonomia in 5 adult patients undergoing chiropractic care for vertebral subluxation, a case series and review of the literature. And I definitely want you guys to stay in and get in on this, because what we're going to be going through is really easy ways that you can take just, oh my gosh, doc, I feel so much better, to having objective indicators of improvements in things like anxiety. And we've talked about questionnaires and things like that in the past, so we actually haven't spoken about this one, so this is going to be brand new. But before we do that, Dr. Steinberg, what the heck is on your shirt?
Oh, my shirt. Yes, it says the WFC does not represent me. With everything that's going on, and the WFC and Parker and the ACA, saying that there's no connection between chiropractic immunity, that is the most unscientific thing I've ever heard. It's absolute ignorance, and I think we as chiropractors need to let the world know that the WFC does not represent us. So that's what I think about that one. It makes absolutely no sense. And here's a little golden gem for you. The minute someone says there's absolutely no evidence, your red flag should go up. There's one thing to say there's not enough evidence or there's only a little, but to say there's none, red flag, it's nonsense.
Right. I mean, I'm a big fan of On Purpose with Kent and Jen Tempo.
Oh, yeah.
And Dr. Kent says that all the time. He's like, the second somebody says there's no evidence, it's like, well, a case study is evidence. A testimonial is evidence. That's evidence. It might not fit your criteria, but to just put out this blanket statement, it's clickbait essentially, but just saying things that are silly.
It's just unscientific. When Nature magazine, which is one of the most highly ranked research journals out there, says that N of 1 studies carry tons and tons of clinical value, it's like, wait a minute, what do we have tons of in our profession? N of 1 studies, and I know today we're going to be talking about an actual case series, so that's actually an N of 5, but there is a connection between neuroimmune. I mean, you don't have to look inside chiropractic. You could look outside the profession. I have tons of textbooks and other books that shows that there's this bidirectional communication between the nervous system and immune system. So it makes absolutely no sense to make such an ignorant statement. And when people want to take the word neuro out of neuromusculoskeletal, it's like, well, you might as well just throw it all away. It makes absolutely no clinical sense, and it's pure ignorance.
Yeah, man. I mean, go right into Guyton textbook of physiology. They've got half a chapter in there on the nervous system on the HPA axis. You flip half a chapter forward, and you can look at how the spinal tracts will influence the HPA axis, and that's in Guyton's textbook of physiology. So yeah, there's no sentence that says misalignment of the spine affects the immune system, but you just have to do like the tiniest bit of critical thinking and trace the pathway and say, look, this is what we see every day. This is the science that supports it. So thank you for wearing that shirt.
Absolutely. And Anthony, you said it right there. You have to do absolute critical thinking. There's the subluxation. When there's models such as the triune brain model talking about the prefrontal cortex versus the middle brain, mammalian brain versus the reptilian brainstem. Well, when you're in brainstem mode, guess what? It's all about survival. There's that fight-flight mechanism. All you care about is me, 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 me. You upgrade to that middle brain, right? Amygdala, emotion. That's when people are looking for love. They're looking for basically acceptance. But the ultimate expression of that innate potential, that's that frontal lobe, that's that frontal cortex. That's critical thinking. So it's almost like, quote unquote, our side, we are the frontal lobes, and these other people, they're all brainstem. Guess what? Which one makes more sense? Clinically, neurologically, frontal lobe, all the way.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, thank you for going into that with me. I love it. I absolutely love it. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at, and once again, this is going to be really important. I mean, I don't know any person who's ever been able to go on PubMed that can't say, I mean, just go on the immune system way, that stress affects the immune system. I mean, we absolutely know that through cortisol. Like, everybody knows that. There's tons of research on that. We're just bridging the gap. Now, when we look at something like anxiety, which is what we're going to talk about today, one of the things that I personally love about changes in anxiety is when we talk about how correcting subluxation allows the body to better adapt to and handle stress, right? And I believe that inability to adapt to and handle stress is what anxiety is. And so it's amazing to see the huge results. Whether it's yesterday in my practice, I had somebody tell me that whenever she exercises, she would get really, really, really anxious, and to the point where she couldn't breathe, not because of the exercise, but because her brain would just go, like the second she ran, she is a psychologist as well, so she would go into this fight or flight mode and would get this complete shortness of breath and had to start exercising. And now she can exercise. She doesn't have that. She can sleep at night. All those different changes for things like anxiety. So I love seeing changes in anxiety because of just how we know how the nervous system functions can impact everything else. And when we went into this research, and we're going to go into it, when you talk about N of 1 versus N of 5, for those of you guys who didn't know, N is the number of subjects you have in a study. So a case study would be N of 1, correct? And we're talking about a 5-person case series here, so we're N and 5. And Dr. Steinberg, let's go ahead and talk about how we were able to objectively measure changes and what changes we saw in anxiety in these cases.
Yeah, 100%. You know, as a chiropractor, call me crazy, but I decided to use objective indicators to determine if a person had that neurostructural stress, that subluxation, as we like to call it. And what I used was surface EMG. We used digital thermography and also heart rate variability. That was the analysis via the computer, but then we do a host of other tests such as postural examination, you know, looking at evidence of subluxation through leg checks, through functional neurological checks. And what we do is we put that all together with full spine x-rays, and right there we have a pretty good snapshot as to not how anxious a person is, because that is a subjective analysis, but is there evidence of vertebral subluxation, and can we help them? Now, to answer your question about the anxiety, we use the Hamilton anxiety form, and you know, it's a really great instrument. It's something that is really easy to utilize. It's a 14-question questionnaire. You know, the person goes through the questions and they check mark the answer 0 to 4, and right there you created a baseline as to how they rank themselves. And so once we collected all that, you know, that's the whole day one visit right there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, one of the things that we talked about now on this show in the past, as well as in practice, we've spoken about using objective indicators like this. For those of you guys that have listened to long term, you may remember the autism treatment evaluation checklist, which we use for kids with autism, where in any part of the alphabet soup, we really use that because it does just let us funnel down and have a really good understanding of how that kiddo is being affected. Now, that's not quick. That's not 14 questions.
No.
We've talked about the Beck depression inventory. We've talked about the Beck anxiety inventory. And I even had a couple of you guys reach out to me about using the Beck anxiety inventory and said, hey, this is really cool to get these, but some of the questions are really flipping weird. Like, we're talking about sex drives in somebody like that, and who they're coming in, and maybe they have a neck pain, and they have a, it almost was too weird in the beginning. Now, the Hamilton, you said, was, first of all, much quicker, and secondly, just easier. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, when you're answering questions 0 to 4, being 0 not present, 4 being very severe, you know, the questions they range from fears to tension, GI issues, respiratory issues, somatic. So it's kind of interesting because it's actually getting into the autonomic nervous system without actually telling a person that. And you know, most people, we're talking like less than 2 minutes, they fill this thing out. And I've never had a person say, no, I'm not interested in doing that. They love the fact that we are research heavy in our office, and they want to be a part of that because they know they're part of the solution, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love that. And I'm just looking at this right now. The cool thing is this was originally published in the British Journal of Medicine Psychology in 1959. It takes 10 to 15 minutes. And the cool thing about this is that this is not a chiropractic scale, right?
No. Yeah, I mean, it's widely accepted. That's what it means. It's perfect.
Yet we're talking about how the nervous system, and has questions about. Remember, this is a psychology scale, not a chiropractic scale. We're talking about how anxiety affects the sensory system. Yes, affects the cardiovascular system. Question 9. The respiratory system. Question 10. The gastrointestinal system. The genitourinary system. And yet we have people like the WFC saying the chiropractic doesn't affect any of those things, right? That the nervous system doesn't really affect any of those things. And it's like, well, where's this? Why are we the only one that puts us in this small hole when everybody recognizes that if you can influence the nervous system, you can influence these things?
Yeah, it really makes no sense whatsoever. And that's why when all you want to do is treat musculoskeletal pain, it's mind-boggling. Especially, there's research that shows there's things more effective for low back pain, such as giving a patient a brochure on how to stretch. It's like, okay, how do you explain that? You really want to put all your eggs in that basket? It's like, no, chiropractic's a salutogenic model. It's not about treating any specific symptom or disease. Yet when you get a person healthier and working better and increase their function and well-being, the direct result is more health. And that's what we saw in this case series is, we didn't give them any pill or, we didn't treat their diagnosis. We gave them chiropractic and we checked the spine, we adjusted where necessary. And the result was a change in autonomic nerve function. We saw a change in surface EMG. We saw the change in how they self-rated themselves on the Hamilton Anxiety Form. It's like, wow, if that's the case, maybe we should be spending our research dollars on, how such a thing can occur. Maybe we should be looking at things such as pro-inflammatory biomarkers, cytokines, and seeing, okay, how do those things change under care? And the funny part is, when you start to talk about things like pro-inflammatory cytokines, guess what system you're automatically jumping into? Oh yeah, the immune system. So that's the funny part about all this. When you put it all together, we belong in the conversation, but there's others that think we don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've read recently, I believe, N of 1 study on pro-inflammatory cytokine markers and cytokines. Are you, and this might be putting you on the spot a little bit, are you familiar with any studies out there that kind of look at on the larger scale? I know we need to put our research dollars into this. Are you familiar with any studies out there that look at this in a little bit more than like a case study?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, it could exist, and if it does, there's not enough of it. Even like right now, there's a few studies looking at things such as like TH1, TH2, and the balance between the two, and getting into TH17 and all those. But this is a good time that we should be spending more time getting into it. But we have others saying that we shouldn't, which makes no sense at all.
It makes it hard because, believe it or not, it does take dollars, right?
Lots of
dollars. Yes. And a lot of those dollars, and I'm not as into this, the politics of it. I've only been in the profession a couple of years. I don't understand all the intricacies to the level that people who have been in it a bit longer have. A lot of those dollars, most of them get funneled through schools. Is that correct? Or does it happen elsewhere?
It's not just schools. There's organizations out there such as the Australian Spinal Research Foundation.
Right.
So there are organizations that are looking for chiropractors to be able to do the research. But I think part of it is, and this is a mark on the chiropractors who embrace the vertebral subluxation as our main point of focus in the office. When they say things, I'm too busy. It's like, what do you mean you're too busy? It's like, we need this. We can't hide in our offices anymore. Even when it comes to politics, like I loathe politics, but I don't want someone else making decisions on my behalf. So that's why I personally get involved and donate my time and my money, because I see it as, it's not just about me. It's about the profession. It's about the people we take care of. I can't imagine not being able to go into the office Monday morning and check people's spines for subluxation legally. But back in the day, that was a thing. Like, people were being thrown in jail just for doing things that we have the privilege of doing today, and we need to protect that still.
Yeah, and you're upstate New York, so you're pretty close to the border up there, huh?
Yeah, that's you say New York and everybody thinks Manhattan. No, yeah. I'm up in Saratoga. The office is in Queensbury. So we're like in the Adirondack region. So, I can hit Canada in like under 3 hours north. I can hit Vermont in less than 30 minutes, so it's like we're in a very beautiful place, but upstate versus downstate's a whole different monster. Very different.
Completely different. Now, I am a ex cross country runner, and Saratoga Springs, good cross country teams up there. So you got to make sure you take care of those teams because they run themselves pretty hard out there. Make sure you're going over to the Saratoga Springs school. So the crazy thing, and I love that, the reason I brought that up was if you drove, you said you're 3 hours away. If you drove 3 hours north, technically we couldn't really even be having this conversation, right? Because there's not double-blind randomized control trials on this. You certainly couldn't put this research that you published on your own website. And to me, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. It just makes no sense that around the world chiropractors are getting in trouble for doing things that we are doing legally here in the States, like checking children, telling people the truth about where health and well-being come from. And a lot of that is because there's people out there, not other professions, but within our profession, and that's something I get really frustrated by, where this chiropractor is like, oh, medical doctor this, medical doctor that. It's like, enough slandering of the medical profession. They already know they're on a sinking ship. It's a system that costs too much money with poor results. And what happens is the general society, they're looking for something different. I think we as chiropractors, we need to maybe sometimes just shut up, like just not open our mouths and like let the people come to us. They're already looking for something different. But what's emerged, especially over the past year, because it's evident around the world, is that we are our own worst enemy. We have others in our profession that don't want us to be able to practice the way we should be able to practice. And the word neuro out, not checking children. It's like, wow, do you not realize like we have the enemy within? And I think we need to talk more about that, not during this podcast per se, but just have more of an awareness about the problems in our own profession. It's almost like turn the light switch on and let's see what scurries kind of thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And one of the things that when I opened up my practice that my wife and I tried to be pretty clear on in terms of our communication with the community is in terms of how we were going to present ourselves. Because coming from school, obviously there's all different groups, you learn all different things, and it's really easy to spend all of your focus on medicine is horrible, and these are all the problems. Right? It's really easy to spend all of your focus on that. But one of the things that I want to always be clear about is chiropractic is awesome because chiropractic is freaking awesome. Right? Chiropractic is amazing because chiropractic is amazing. Chiropractic isn't amazing because medicine sucks. It's totally different, right? Like it can do whatever. I mean, it's like, as medicine saved lives? Absolutely. I was an EMT for 10 years. My wife's a neonatal ICU nurse. Like emergency medicine saves lives every day. And that's great, right? It's great. And chiropractic has nothing to do with that, right? We are just saying, well, it's good that when you're sick, you have that, but shouldn't our focus be on what can we do to be as healthy as we possibly can? And if we put our focus on that, I think that that's the communication that we need to have. That's what our rhetoric needs to be. I think that that's what our research dollars need to go to. It's okay to address the elephant in the room, which is that what we've been doing is broken. But it's a really fine line between what we've been doing is broken, this works, and everything over there sucks, so you need to come over here. I think that that's a good line, and I appreciate the communication, the well thought out communication that you brought forth, kind of addressing that line.
Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting because during this whole situation, as we'll call it, that we're in across the U.S. and world, like I saw my practice numbers drop and I adapted to it. Yet the weird thing is, other than like 1 week during this whole 2-month period, I've had this like shockingly high new patient number, and it's like it's so weird to me. Yeah, I think people are really starting to wake up. They're looking for something different, and I think if we can put together a clear message about where health comes from, about what we actually do as chiropractors, right? Because there's a lot of public misperception out there, and teach them about what they could have, and just wait for them to come in. One of the things I remember as a student, I'm a plumber graduated back in, let's see here, 2008. I had that whole, I want to help every man, woman, and child, checking them for vertebral subluxation. But it's like, I don't have that same focus anymore, because my focus now is every man, woman, and child in the world needs to get their spine checked for vertebral subluxation, but just not in my office. So I have basically picked and choose my battles. Like, I don't take Medicare, I don't do no fault, I don't do workers' comp. It's 100% self-pay office. About a third of the office is pediatric. It's this place I love going to every day. We get great results. People pay, they stay, they refer. And I think, and I could be wrong, but I really think that the others in our profession who are trying to basically destroy it with their nonsense, maybe if they had good personal care themselves, getting their own spine checked, and we taught them how to communicate and how to clinically check people, in a vertebral subluxation model, maybe, just maybe, this whole crazy thing will go by the wayside. But I'm not holding my breath, because we got some crazy heads out there.
Yeah. Now, going back, and I like the concept, and one of the things we kind of discussed is we just spent all this time talking about the salutogenic model, getting checked for subluxation. And I think that there also is a fine line in terms of saying, okay, chiropractic can help with these other things, right? I mean, we have like anxiety, like the immune system, like reproductive system, everything like that. But just because chiropractic correction of subluxation is salutogenic, and that's the reason that it works, it's really easy to fall into allopathic communication.
100%.
Right? It's super easy to do. So take us through, and we were talking before this, I asked you, hey, do you hand the HAM to everybody with anxiety? And you said, no, you don't, right? And I think that we have to address and meet people where they're at and bring us a little bit closer. But can you kind of take us a little bit more through how you draw that line in the sand in your office in terms of correction of vertebral subluxation as salutogenic versus allopathic and salutogenic conversation?
Sure, 100%. I think we need to first meet them where they're at. And the truth is, people communicate on a condition-based conversation, So, we're talking about anxiety. So if they came in, and people did come in wondering if I could help them, because, people talk in your community, right? And when they come in, we do have a conversation about it. But then on day one, I set the tone. Even my, intake form, it says, we don't treat conditions. What we do is we check your spine for vertebral subluxation, adjust where necessary. So they know that, yet they know that the nervous system plays a role in this. That's why I get kind of like, angry.
Yeah.
I hear others saying, no, we shouldn't be talking about the nervous system. It's like, that makes no sense, because, a lot of us have Merrick charts in our office, and it's a great educational tool. I don't think all of chiropractic, we should put all our eggs in that basket per se, because that doesn't make sense. But, do we know that the vagus nerve comes out of the cranial area and comes out of the upper neck and is highly influenced by, say, C2 as an example? Yes, that's called anatomy and physiology. And so when a person sees their thermal scan and sees that there's nerve stress in the upper area, and then when we show them a X-ray, and biomechanically you can see that there's a shift that's occurred, I think, even a kindergartner can go, oh, that's bad. It's like, yes. And guess what? That is what we do as chiropractors. And so to go back to your question about, how do we handle that day one? If someone comes in, say, their chief complaint's asthma, guess what? I have a spirometer. Say, here you go, blow into this thing 3 times. Let's see where you are. And, BJ used to do that, not because he was treating conditions. He wasn't practicing in an allopathic model. What he was doing? He was creating a baseline. And it was to say, okay, if we can improve function using a subjective base model, and we can do it again and show improvement, it doesn't show that we treated their asthma. It shows that we improved their physiology. So that's where pathogenesis versus salutogenesis needs to be the drum that we beat from today forward in our profession, in my opinion.
Yeah, looks like I'm buying a spirometer. That's great. That's solid, guys. I mean, anybody gonna buy a spirometer now? That's awesome. Just throw it on there, blow it in 3 times. That's great. It makes perfect sense. And I think it's cool because, and this is one of the reasons that I love objective technology. Whether you use X-ray and you find a curve, whether you use motion x-ray, if you're doing flexion extension, or if you're Pierce and you're looking at the motion of the spine, whether you use SEMG, thermal, HRV, all of the above is to have somebody come into your office and say, hey, this is what I have going on, blah, 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 right? And to get them say, okay, great, have that conversation, do your due diligence and, stay compliant, right? Understand their driving force of why they want to get that corrected, get them off of the back pain to playing with your kids, right? And like the back pain isn't the issue. The fact that you can't play with your kids is the issue. And then show them the subluxation in their body and get to the point where it's like, hey, I need to get this corrected because I see where the dysfunction is in my body. The low back pain would be a huge plus, but I can't live with that abnormal motion, nerve interference, postural abnormality. I can't do that anymore because I know my body isn't functioning at its best and my kids deserve me at my best. That, I think, is that funnel process. And there's a big art to it, right? Sure. But I think that's a lot of where that conversation goes. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. And the thing is, there's freedom in being honest with people. So, you asked about, say, conditions. So let's say a person came in with a chief complaint of headaches. During the intake process, you look at their review of systems and you notice that constipation is an issue, that sleep's an issue, energy is an issue, and let's say they also get a lot of stomach aches. So as you go through your care, you're supposed to do periodic reevaluations, re-exams, progress scans, as I call it in my office. And you sit there and you say, all right, how's your headaches? And the patient's like, no change. So no change in frequency, duration? No. Hey, how's your sleep? Oh, so much better. How's your energy? So much better.
Yeah.
How's your constipation? Poop every day. Yeah. Huh. How's your stomach been doing? So much better. So the question is, did you fail the patient? In an allopathic model, yes, you failed the patient. In a chiropractic model, if you stated on day one that we're not here to treat your headache, but we're here to improve your health and well-being by addressing the vertebral subluxation of your spine, and you can show them via an improvement in objective findings, you are helping them. So that's the secret to the sauce. You have to understand what chiropractic is, number one. You need to deliver on the goods, number two. And number three, you just need to be honest with them. And you know what happens? People get it. They truly get it. I mean, how many chiropractors still get neck pain? Like I got a spasm in my occiput right now. Just talking. It's like, it's okay. There's no such thing as a pain-free life, but there is such a thing as a life of better health, better well-being, and just more vitality.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, man. So objective indicators, we went through, you use SEMG, HRV, thermal. So you doing the full core score with that?
No, currently I'm not. I was before, but anymore.
Okay. Well, we won't talk. Yeah. I'm looking into, we don't use HRV. We use thermal and SEMG right now, but we're really looking at HRV because I love reading research, and like every time I see HRV, it makes my heart flutter a little bit. So we're looking into investing in it. We talked about the spirometer. Obviously, if somebody has asthma, are there any other physiological objective measurements that you do in your practice? Maybe not everybody, but just to get a good baseline.
Yeah, 100%. Bilateral weight scales. Okay. Doing checks on a postural grid, A to P and lateral, to look for head translation, high shoulder, head tilt, head rotation. We do a lot of neuro kind of exams. So we have the basic chiropractic ones, such as electric, cervical syndrome, things such as, say, like a straight leg raise, palpation, range of motion. Then I like to get into the neuro side, whether it's, Womberg's, one-legged stand, rapid alternating movements, finger to nose, heel to shin. I mean, like we just throw the whole slew of exams at them, because it gets to the point where the patient goes, dang, it's not a back issue that I have. You know what the issue is? I have a health issue. And you know what they start to realize? Maybe I'm not as healthy as I should be. And what's the system that's probably dysfunctioning at the root cause of this? The nervous system.
I love that. And letting them see something like, what is the one? Not Romberg's, I think it's Bakuda's step test. And that's the one where they march in place, right? And
they march in place with their hands up. Yeah. And you do it for 30 seconds. And if you see they drift, to one direction, say like 30 degrees, that suddenly they open their eyes, they're like, whoa.
Yeah. Why am I on the other side of the room right now? What happened?
Yeah. Or, even another one being, say, walking forward, from heel to toe, say with like your eyes closed, and all of a sudden they're falling over and they're like, wow, why am I falling so much to my side when I do that? It's like I'm drunk. This is the test that police officers do. And suddenly, you could say, well, yeah, what it is, it's showing that your balance and coordination's off. And they're like, I didn't know I had a problem there. I came in because my low back hurts, but you're telling me that I'm not as healthy as I should be. So right there, if you know your anatomy and physiology, you could say, yeah, balance and coordination is showing us that your brain isn't able to communicate with your body properly. And the information comes in from one of three areas, either your eyes, your canals in your ears, or your spine. So if you have them do it with their eyes closed and suddenly you're down to ear canal and say spine, there's a problem with one of the two. And so as you start to collect the data and get evidence, suddenly it becomes so crystal clear to the patient. And you know what happens? The test itself sells the care. And next thing you know, they're like, dang, I need to get my spouse in here. I need to get my kids in here. It's like, oh. And guess what? You didn't tell the story per se. You didn't tell them about Harvey Lillard and how it restored his hearing and the 33 principles. There comes a time and a place for that. But I say, and this is my opinion, start with the science. Start with the science.
And know it. And don't say some bull science. It was just a soundbite that you heard elsewhere and you repeat. Like, how many different numbers have you heard for chiropractic boosts immunity by this %? I'm like, no, like what? 600%. That's called autoimmune disorder. That's what that's called. That's called.
That's great. I'm glad you said that because the deniers, as we'll call them, right? These people right here. They talk about, well, it doesn't boost it. Well, it's like, well, technically they're right to a certain degree.
Right, 100%.
Yeah, it's. I think the good example of this is the blood pressure study, right? Because if we tell the people, hey, your blood pressure is too high, you should come into the office. I bet you we could lower it. Whoa, time out. Because what if a person's blood pressure is too low and they start care and it raises? It's about that physiological homeostatic level. That's what we're gunning for. Like what is optimal for that person?
Right.
That's different. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. I was at a Band of Brothers meeting a couple months ago, and somebody was telling a story about, they adjusted somebody, and she had, after the adjustment, she had the worst headache that she'd ever experienced in her entire life, 10 out of 10. And he was like, shit, I just stroked this person out. Like, what did I do? Right? Like, what happened? And it turns out she went and got an MRI, and she had a tumor in her brain. And so the question is like, all right, so there was no lawsuit, anything like that. But the question is that what was the adjustment? What cleared up the path? Because like there was some communication, because if you have something growing in your brain, right, like and this is obviously a really extreme example. So like, let's throw out any malpractice stuff on this. Like, let's talk about maybe that we're not talking about that. What we're talking about is, philosophically, when it comes down to it, is what if that adjustment is what allowed her brain to recognize that there was a problem, and the headache was the symptom of the problem, and she never would have gone until that was too large, and then that headache is actually what told her to go get the MRI, and now she can go get that treated. Like, it's the same thing with blood pressure, I think. And that's a really, really, really extreme example. So maybe I shouldn't have said that, but it's just an example. But I love it. And the thing is that when you go, especially in politics, science, chiropractic, one of the hardest things is listening to somebody argue something that you agree with and using things that are not factual.
Yeah. No, I hear you. That's why I don't like when they say our profession says, we boost the immune system. Mm-hmm. No, maybe we should say things such as, we help the immune system work more efficiently, or we optimize the immune system. Because like you mentioned, autoimmune, and like I just had someone come in this past week, and their chief complaint, the reason they came in was Crohn's disease. Mm-hmm. So I see that on the questionnaire and the intake form. I'm like drooling over that, because like I know the science, we know the role of inflammation in the vagus nerve. And I was looking at her results, and I was like, holy cannoli, right off the bat, upper cervical is highly involved. It's like, I know for a fact that her well-being and her health and function are going to get better as a result of care there.
100%, 100%. You see some of those and you're like, yeah, I know you're going to do better. I don't want to just tell you. I don't want to tell you that because you do experience it, but yeah, we just know that it's going to happen. We went through a ton of objective measures, and I want to thank you so much for your time so far. So if for any reason, if you need to go, like, let me know. I know you said about 30% kids, you said, right? 30% peds, about, maybe?
It's a little above that, yeah.
We can Chiro math it. It doesn't matter. 30% we'll use nice and around.
Oh, like 99%.
99% kids. I never see. It's all families, and everybody pays, and we put a box on the wall. They pay $1,000 a month every person. So uphill both ways. Any specific objective measurements you use for peds that you wouldn't necessarily use for adults?
Yeah, I get a lot into perimeter reflexes with children, and with adults, not as much, some, but definitely the perimeter reflex is 100%.
Yeah. I would say for us as well, that we didn't use primitive reflexes for like the first 2 years in practice, 2-3 years, and we started going really in after I went to Linda Slack's ICPA seminar, and I knew all about the primitive reflexes, but I went and I was like, holy shoot, like how have I not, like, and we were serving a ton of kids on the spectrum with sensory issues at the time.
Oh man,
like, how am I not utilizing this? If not even only to integrate, but as an objective measure, like that brings, because I'm not really taking X-ray on every kid, but that brings the conversation so much away from random bars on a thermography scan, right?
So that's interesting that you brought that up, because I've had that thought, and this is still a clinical challenge for me personally, because I'm the forever chiropractic student. I might be a chiro nerd, but I'm also the forever student. One of the challenges I see is, if we're going to use perimeter reflexes as an objective indicator, at what point do we go in and start doing those exercises? With a lot of the kids, I've decided to say, okay, let me run through all the reflexes and then put them through an initial phase of care, not do any of the remediation exercises, and then retest. And it's fascinating what happens. Some of them gone, like their ATNR, CNR, Moreau, rooting, gone. In other kids, all on, full throttle. So it's like, damn, maybe it's more time. And so for some of those kids, I'll do another phase of care. And next thing you know, same damn thing. So that's where it's like, where's that magical tipping point between, when you do it versus when you don't? Some get into nutrition. Like you get into nutrition day one, like saying, hey man, I think your kid has chronic ear infections because there's a trigger such as, say, dairy. And dairy happens to be one of the child's 3 T's. And that's why they constantly are subluxating C2. It's like, I don't know, but it gets to a point. This is where I think objective indicators, or say like a thermal scan, is really valuable, because you can get to a point and say, hey, mom and dad, listen, here's the deal. They're clear. They're not showing anything structural wise. They're holding adjustments. So maybe it's time to start looking at other things. And at that point, you have to make a decision as a chiropractor. Do you do those things in your office yourself, or do you farm that out to others? And the cool part about when you farm it out to others is it takes a village. And when people know that it's not about you, it's about their personal well-being, it's pretty awesome to see what happens.
Yeah, I definitely, I love what you just said. I love everything about what you just said. I think too often we jump right into it. It's like we have this, and we can look at it. It's like, boom, let's do all these different things. It's like, first off, you do too many things at once. We don't know what's working. And second of all, we're going to crazy brain that kid. Like there's too much change at once. The whole problem with subluxation is they don't adapt. So you're going to put in a ton of changes all at once. How can they possibly adapt to the change?
Exactly.
And on a side note, I've been collecting recently on a smaller scale, because we started collecting it before COVID hit, a lot of 4 weeks, initial exam, what reflexes are present, to 1 month of care, what reflexes are present, and just looking at the numbers disappear. And guys, if you like serving kids, and I think one of the coolest things in the nervous system in chiropractic is to see those disappear, changing nothing but chiropractic. I think that's like the coolest. I think that's the coolest thing. And so I don't have that much on my own in my office, but if you wanted to, if you have a good, and if you don't, that's fine. But if you have some data right there and you want to look at it together, or maybe compile or something like that, and maybe put together a case series or something like that, I'd love to do that with you.
Sounds great. Yeah, that's my challenge right now. I have an associate doc, so Dr. Kate and I, gosh, it's crazy because it's a time issue, really. Time and focus, energy. I don't know, but like right now, I have at least 40 case studies that I'm sitting on. Things that need to be put together. I'm like, oh my gosh, and some of them are freaking nuts. One kid with cerebral palsy who stopped wetting the bed, his migraines went away. Another one where a little girl, she was diagnosed with abdominal migraines. They did all these things and nothing. I wanted to get x-rays. And dad didn't want x-rays. He happened to be a local allopath. And I said, no, I want x-rays. And I could prove, I had leverage in the case study. The kid hit her head. And on the completely anterior. And I gave her first adjustment at the next visit. And I'll never forget it. It was a C2. I did TRT, so got the integrator on there, boom, and then about 20 minutes later, her right arm went numb, and I was like, wow, so I had to talk to parents off the cliff on that one.
Yeah.
Long story short, her dural system must have unwound so aggressively and amazingly. The kid was completely asymptomatic in 3 weeks, and she struggled for months and months. And it wasn't even that, but there was some mental health things going on, such as anxiety. So it's like, guess what? That'd be pretty cool to share with the profession. And we all have those kind of stories. It's just knowing how to write them up, taking time to do it. And then here's the most important part, right? Once they're published in a journal of any type, we should be using these things as patient education in our office. That's it. Because it's worthless for you and I to talk about it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
True, it is. It's like, let me pat myself on the back. But when you share this with others, they go, oh, maybe you can help my mom. Oh, maybe you can help my kid.
Yeah.
I think we need to be using our research a little bit more efficiently as a profession.
Now, I'm going to shameless plug here, and I'm so glad you said that. So anybody listening, if you guys want to do that, if you guys go to chiroedgemedia.com, there happens to be a perfect subscription service that runs this podcast that takes anything that's published on PubMed or in any chiropractic journal, and every week gives 3 beautiful patient education materials, fully referenced on the bottom, for your community with corresponding and referenced social media posts. So if what Doc just said sounds really intriguing and interesting, you don't want to do the work and somebody to write it for you, go to chiroedgemedia.com. Thank you. That was amazing. I couldn't have done that better myself.
Man, I put it up there. I was hoping that you would slam dunk it. It was awesome. I got the assist, baby.
Oh God, I love it. I'll give you credit. All right, 10% of anybody who signs up for this podcast. Don't quote me on that. All right. So anyway, hey, thank you so much for joining. I hope you guys got a ton of info. I was burning notes here on objective indicators. Amazon's going to get a couple orders of spirometers coming up. And so that was awesome. Anything do you want to leave anybody with? Anything we didn't get to, or just how people can contact you? I'll give you the floor.
Yeah, easy. You can email me, drbruce@queensberrychiropractic.com. We have something that we're going to be launching. Gosh, I don't know when. I put it on the back burner. That's our Chiro Nerds program. Right now I'm stealing people's emails to put that together. But what it really boils down to is I want chiropractic to thrive. I really think that we have a gift to the world, and it needs to be shared, but it needs to be shared in a really strategic manner. I want chiropractors to raise the bar. If you're poor in marketing, find someone that's good at marketing. If you're poor with figuring out how to help people clinically, find a system that works for you. But right now, the world is ready for us. Get better, deliver, and let's give them what we got. So Anthony, appreciate you keeping me on here, and it's been a blast. Thank you.
Going to be really, really, really great. So hey guys, thank you so much for joining. This is another episode of the Chiropractic Research Breakdown, and go slay some subluxation this week, and I love you all.
Hey, peace out, man. It was a blast.